Okay. Good evening, everybody. I
Hi,
see
Matt.
some. Hi, Steve. I take it you can hear me and see me clearly.
Yes, I was thinking it's very appropriate and a tribute to Jack that it doesn't run perfectly.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that. Um, Thank you, everyone, for coming. The slideshow will start in 5 minutes or so. We like to make some time for some late arrivals. My name is Matt. I'm the president of the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society to some of the new faces who I see. I'll tell you a little bit about our organization while we wait. The Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society is the San Francisco Bay Area's club for stereo photography enthusiasts. Stereo photography, also known as 3D photography, is the craft of making pictures with the illusion of depth. We, as an organization, trace our lineage back to 1934. Our mission is to encourage and promote the art of stereo photography through the support of our community and outreach to the public. And Jack was an active member for about 15 years, maybe a little bit more. Now, I know that not everyone here is familiar with stereo photography or has viewed 3D photographs, so we do have a few options depending on your setup. I'm going to put some links in the Zoom chat right now. I think the 3D pros who have gadgets like 3D TVs and loom pads and similar devices know what to do with the half-width side-by-side slideshow. We also run an anaglyph slideshow, and that's for red-blue glasses, such as these. You might have these lying around the house, maybe in a drawer, maybe from a comic book or a DVD or something. And that's a viable option also. I'll also be screen sharing on Zoom, and I'll be showing what we call full width side by side photos, stereo photos. So if 3D isn't your thing, the Zoom screen share is probably your best bet. You'll see two photos instead of one, but the photos will be clear. Some people have viewers for that format, beam splitters like this. You probably don't have one of these around if you don't know what it is. And some of us can actually free view, just sort of go a little wall-eyed and see the photos in 3D without a viewer. It takes some practice. I wouldn't recommend it for a whole 2-hour slideshow, but we'll see how this goes. So links to these streams are in the chat if you're interested, and there's a link to our website also. Now,
Matt.
for tonight's slideshow, I curated a huge collection of stereo photos made by Jack. And the ones that I'm going to show are his favorites, the ones that were the most popular, the ones that were exhibited or placed in international exhibitions. And last but not least, the ones that are comfortable to view. Because Jack wasn't always the most precise when it came to his stereo alignment or formatting. Now, unfortunately, I don't have all of his input. There may be 100 or more that aren't in my archives that are before my time with the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society. But I think what we're going to see tonight is a fantastic representation of the type of creative stereo photography that he practiced. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I've categorized these into 5 sort of mini slideshows that emphasize the kind of distinct creative techniques that he used. They are in chronological order for the most part, but there is some overlap. And we'll start with some of his more conventional stereo photography. and we will end with some highly creative examples. Before I jump into the slideshow, does anyone have anything they would like to ask or add or anything that I can clarify?
Uh, Actually, yes. Do we know the cause of Jack's death?
I do not. There is an obituary published, which I can put in the chat. That's all the
Hi,
information that I have.
hi, everyone. My name is Layla Hardman, and I was Jack's niece.
Hi, Layla.
So,
Welcome.
hi, thank you. And my mom's on too, Carol,
Hi, Carol.
Ann. And we're not sure. He didn't feel good the night before. He let us know he didn't feel good. He had a bad night. He got up the next morning. He said he felt better. He went to see his doctor. The doctor put some tests out to have run for him, and sent him home. And then sometime during the night, he passed away.
Okay.
Yeah. So the coroner didn't even want to do, he's like, they put down heart disease. So it was very sad.
Yeah,
How old was he?
He was 85.
I've just put his obituary in the chat. There's a link to it. And thank you for sharing that. That's something I'm sure we were all curious about. Jack participated in the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society really to the end. He submitted photos for our July meeting. And it really was a surprise. He didn't show up for August, and then we learned what had happened. So thanks for letting us know. Welcome, Ed. It's been a while. Great to see you.
Yes. I don't know if now's the time, but there was something I wanted to say about Jack, too. I was pretty active in the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society about 2013 through 18 or so. And really, I guess the reason I looked it up when I moved to the Bay Area in 2013 was that I had seen Jack give a talk on his hybridizations of Lewisias. There's a series of botanical slideshows in Tillman Park called the Wayne Roderick Lectures. And his was very different because he came in there with 3D glasses and stuff, and everybody really liked it, and I was very impressed. And so I talked to him a little about it, and that's, I guess, the first time I heard about the club. But I didn't join until like 3 years later because I was mostly in Lake County, which actually I am in now too, but it's different.
Well, and that was when we met in person every month. It seems like so long ago.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we're meeting online, and I am itching to get back together in person, but it's it's hard. I don't know how we did it before. Thanks for sharing that, Ed. That's great. I can imagine, Jack, would that have been at Tilden Park at the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can imagine him with those two projectors, setting them up and aligning them. It was probably a beast of a projector that he set up to make that show work.
Yeah. It turned out well.
Yeah, we'll see some of those, or maybe one of those photos tonight.
Mm-hmm.
He had many interests, as we'll see, that he recorded in 3D. All right. Are there any other thoughts or questions before we look at the first batch of photos? Let me get this set up. Let me share my screen. I will also be keeping an eye on the chat. If anyone has anything they'd like to add, I'll keep an eye on it and try to get to it. And we'll take little breaks between these mini slideshows, if nothing else, just to sort of rest our eyes and prepare for the next variety of photos. All right, I'll be setting this up. This will just take a moment. All right, if you're following along with me, you should see our title slide for this evening. For those who are just watching without the 3D, it looks like two title slides. And I do have the stream set up on our YouTube channels. And welcome, Melinda. We're just getting started.
Hi, thanks, Adam.
work out an audio issue here. Glad to be
Sure.
here.
As I was saying, we'll have plenty of opportunities to pause, and if there's anything you want to say at any time, that's fine. And I have a few thoughts myself, but don't let me dominate the conversation if anyone has anything they want to say. And for the YouTube stream, there's a lag of 10 or 20 seconds or so, but we go pretty slow here. So one thing that I do want to say as we go through these is that this retrospective isn't something that Jack specifically requested. This isn't something that he had planned. He didn't archive his photos for us or anything. And that was all by choice. These are photos that he made, really for his own enjoyment. He really enjoyed looking at his own photos. This photo, Captain Jack, is by Melinda Green, who's here right now. This was on a field trip. And I think we'll actually see one of his photos from that field trip. Jack was very active with stereo photography. He was active in the Photographic Society of America certified stereo exhibitions. He had been awarded 4 stars, and he was working towards his 5th. Jack had a lifetime interest in photography, but he was kind of late to the 3D game. This is a photo that he actually shared. This is a conversion that he made of an old slide. He recounted the story of how he was buried alive in this cave and barely escaped with his life. That's a friend of his who was caving with him and rescued him. So his interests were varied and often were caught on film. This is Jack. I'm not sure when this is. I'm going to say probably the 1980s. He's fossicking. He's mining in Australia. This is another conversion that he did from a flat photo that, I don't know who took this. He didn't take it. So he really, in his lifetime, did travel the world and returned with some very interesting photographs. This is Jack, I think, a little bit later in India. Another 2D photo that he converted. Jack's had many creatives, as we'll see later in the show. His style became more and more creative the more he practiced. And that's Jack. I think we've all seen a lot of this one here. So the earliest stereo photography that I have by Jack is what I would call conventional. It's a lot of it is very good. It's the kind of photos that I take. These are photos about places that he's visited and things that he's experienced. The earliest photograph that I have from Jack is from 2008. And the earliest record that I have of Jack's involvement with what was then the Oakland Camera Club, now where we are the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society, was in 2009. And I don't know how he came to be a stereo photographer. What I recall is he just showed up to one of our meetings and then just kept coming back. There was a 3D resurgence at the time. We were getting new 3D movies and 3D TVs, and I think he was probably curious, and he followed that curiosity. and that led him here. He was strictly a stereo photographer. He really wasn't interested in 3D movies, virtual reality, augmented reality, auto stereo displays, AI conversions. He was fairly traditional in his medium. That's not to say he didn't make some 3D videos, which I wasn't able to track down, but we did see some short videos of his back in the day. And as I said before, he captured many of his interests in stereo. This would be Lake Merritt in Oakland. As time went on, we saw, fewer and fewer of those types of photos. This one is bordering on creative. It's a really nice composition. There are definitely some elements that he added. The Orovada sign, the sky. He began to experiment fairly early on. I'm not sure how he achieved this effect. This is at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Some sort of an exhibit. Whatever the filter is to obtain this grain, this dithering. I don't know. It's a very interesting effect. Jack's titles really say a lot about how he saw the world and his sense of what he was capturing. The title of this one is, "What Are These?" Oftentimes his titles don't really describe where or what the situation was. But I can tell you for sure that this was taken at an aquarium. For the most part, the subjects, the people who he's shooting, aren't necessarily friends or family members. He did, what I would call street photography, just capturing the world around him. I'm guessing this would have been the Alameda County Fair. I do have a list of titles and dates that I'll post after the slideshow. And incidentally, this slideshow will be available on YouTube if you want to revisit any of it. I believe the title of this stereo photograph is Marbles. Welcome, Stephanie. Great to see you.
Hey, just had to finished one meeting, now into another one.
All right. Well, we're really just getting started. We're looking at Jack's, what I'm calling his conventional photography. The title of this piece is Junk. It's got a nice sort of false frame effect. Welcome, Oleg.
Hey, finally got on.
All right. Glad you could make it. You didn't miss much, and if you want to catch up later, this will be on YouTube.
Good.
Although, Oleg, I am quite sure you've seen all of these photos before. I'm sure they'll bring back memories for you.
Yeah. There's one in particular I'm waiting for.
All right. Well, if it doesn't come up tonight, let me know, and I'll see if I can track it down. As I was saying, I don't have all of Jack's stereo photos. I have quite a lot of them, but the earliest stuff that he submitted, I wasn't able to track down. I think that what we're going to see tonight, though, is represents the best of what he was doing. The title of this one is Bugs. It's a very interesting effect. If you notice, there are two different colored lights shining on the subject, illuminating the subject for each eye. And it creates a very interesting retinal rivalry effect, put to very good creative use here. This praying mantis is actually, this is not a macro photo. This was an exhibit at a museum. One of my favorites. I think Jack's definitely being creative here, painting in some of those rays. All right, and that's our first batch of photos. For those who are new to 3D, I hope that worked for you. We're going to take a brief pause here, and I did want to show, before we move on to the next section, the type of camera that Jack used to capture these photos. He got a lot of use out of his Fuji W3. Most of the stereo photographers here certainly know this. This was a 3D digital camera, point and shoot digital camera. Does anyone know what years it was sold? That detail eludes me.
2010 was when the W3 was introduced. 2009 for the W1.
Thank you, Dennis. No longer available new, but used and new old stock are still available on eBay. Very capable little camera. I actually wore mine out. That's why I don't use it anymore. But I did want to share this. This was really Jack's primary camera. Later in his stereo photography career, as we could call it, he put the W3 aside and he shot primarily with his smartphone. And as many of us know here, you can make a 3D photo with a single lens camera. You take two photos slightly offset from each other. And the amount of that offset is important for the comfort of of viewing the stereo photo and the effectiveness of the depth effect. We'll see a lot of those as well, and I'll point a few of those out. Before we move on to the next batch, are there any questions that I can answer? All right. Let's pick up where we left off. I have a small group here of photos from Yosemite, which was really one of his favorite places. And this one in particular I wanted to call out because he's using an interesting creative effect that we're going to see a lot of in this group, and this is the hyperstereo effect. He was very far away from these falls when he took the photo, and he was able to create the illusion of depth in this 3D photo by taking two photos that were very far apart, much farther apart than our eyes are. The average interpupillary distance, I think I said that right, is 63 millimeters. This was probably, these photos were probably taken, I don't know, 6 feet apart, something like that. And it gives an enhanced 3D effect to landscapes or subjects that are far away. We'll see more of these in a bit. Here's another example. I'm guessing this was taken from a hiking trail. And these would have been two separate photos taken within a few seconds of each other. So I don't know how much time he spent in Yosemite, how often he visited it, but I know it was an important place for him. Particularly the Ahwahnee Hotel. I'm not going to say he always stayed there, but that was an important place for him. There's an Easter egg in this photo. Does everyone see it? It's in the background. There is a big cat lurking in the shadows. Certainly wasn't there when Jack made this photo. As we'll see, he entered a creative phase where he was adding a lot of elements creatively in Photoshop to his stereo photography. This, I'm sure, is a straight shot from his W3. That's dinner. I couldn't find the photo that I really wanted to show. He told a story once of catching a fish and bringing it to the restaurant with him, and the chef prepared it for him. It's not this fish, but at least this photo reminded me of that great story. All right, let's get into some hypers. The photo we just looked at, the one of dinner, was a natural vision in the sense that the spacing of the lenses was more or less the distance of our eyes. This next batch of photos we're going to see, he would have taken exposures that were, several feet or more apart. Likely on a moving vehicle like a ferry. Or he could have positioned himself in a strategic place and walked. Over the years, he had a whole series of Bay hypers that I never really connected until I sat down with the entire collection and sort of grouped these together. This one's really fascinating, really from a historic perspective, because we see the two Bay bridges. The original bridge looks like it's being taken down, and the replacement Bay Bridge, which stands today. This one, I'm guessing, was taken from the Berkeley Hills. One thing that I notice going through this collection is that Jack really got around. He got around the Bay Area and he got around the state. We'll see more examples of that. Pink Triangle is the title of this one. I have no idea where Jack had positioned himself to capture this. And a very interesting photo historically as well. We see the construction of the Salesforce Tower, which really dominates the San Francisco skyline now. I'm going to say that Jack wasn't always careful when it came to colors, saturation, hue, white balance. He was, I think he really enjoyed making photos that made a punch. Oh, very nice light on that one. We saw a portrait of Jack taken by Melinda Green at the beginning of our slideshow. And I believe this photo is from that field trip. That was a field trip where we took a ferry ride and took photos of the cityscape as the ferry paralleled the city. And the result was these really amazing hyper stereo San Francisco cityscapes. I'm not sure if this one is from that field trip. He practiced this technique before and after that field trip, I know. So this could be just another ferry ride into the city. Here's one of Sausalito. I was with Jack when he made this. We took a day trip into Sausalito and back with our stereo cameras. And that was a really nice day. And this is a very unique representation of the town. This, I believe, is Seattle. This photo, and I think there's another one coming up, must have been taken from an airplane. I think probably an airplane landing at Oakland International, or maybe SFO. I don't really know the flight patterns, but a tremendous hyperstereo effect here of Cal Stadium. Yeah, here's another one. Looks like the Salesforce Tower was almost complete at this point. I'm not sure how Jack grabbed this one. It's a W3 shot, but it's a hyper. He must have used the built-in hyper stereo setting on his W3. Jack would have captured this on a trip down Highway 1, maybe headed towards Half Moon Bay or Big Sur. Yeah, this one too. I'm not sure exactly how Jack accomplished this. That's a very unique perspective of the bridge. Certainly would have been captured on a ferry. Really interesting reflections in this one. Most of the stereo photos in this slideshow that are of performances, of shows, were likely taken in Reno, which is where this photo was taken. In fact, we've already seen 2 or 3 of those. Really nice subject here. These hyper stereos, it's as if you're looking through the eyes of a giant. Now this would be a giant pretty low to the ground. But if you're seeing these in 3D for the first time, you'll notice that there is a miniaturization effect. It seems to sort of shrink things, give the subject the appearance of like a model train set or something. And I don't know the science behind how the mind perceives that, but that is the effect. As I mentioned, there are calculations to determine how far apart your lenses should be, your cameras, or your two exposures, based on the distance of the closest subject from the camera. And there are apps and spreadsheets that'll calculate that for you. I very much doubt Jack ever did any of that. I'm sure he just winged it, used a rule of thumb, maybe. Some of his hypers I'm not showing tonight because they're too hyper and just too hard to view. But I think at one point he did develop a knack for it. And the ones that didn't turn out, he would just throw away or not show. Or he would show us and not care. Here's the western span of the Bay Bridge, and there's the complete Salesforce Tower. This photo, this hyperstereo of the USS Hornet, may also have been from a Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society field trip. We did visit it. We saw one photo of a jet fighter that I'm sure is on the deck of this carrier. It's a museum docked in Oakland. A beautiful shot shooting into the sun of the California Science Center at, no, that's the, I'm thinking of the Science Center in LA. This is in Golden Gate Park. And this is of the Sierras. And that's our batch of hypers. That's our second slideshow. Let's take a little pause here and let me ask, how am I doing? Too fast, too slow, too loud, too quiet?
Just right.
Okay. I am certainly open to feedback. And if anyone has anything they would like to say, go ahead, jump in. Otherwise, we'll move on to some of the plants that he hybridized. Ed was telling us about that. And his amazing era of lichen photography. And if lichen doesn't sound amazing, you will be amazed if you haven't seen these. So let's move on. I'll share my screen again. Now, Jack was the real expert on the plants that he photographed here. As Ed said, Ed met Jack at a presentation. I have a record of Jack in 2008 giving a presentation at 3D Con. That's our annual convention. called Growing and Hybridizing Louisa Alpine Gems. That reference is in an archived copy of Stereo World magazine from the time. Louisias, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully close enough, are succulent, perennial, flowering plants native to Western North America. And Jack at one point actively hybridized the plant and invented his own strains. This is an interesting photo that he took of how he captured the photos that we're going to see here. This is when Jack begins to explore macro stereo photography, something which he was probably practicing at the very beginning of his interest of stereo. You can see he has a traditional camera, and it's on a slide bar, and he can precisely move that camera left or right based on a calculation or a rule of thumb of the distance of the plant that he's photographing. And if he gets the distance right, it'll be a comfortable 3D view, as we'll see here. I'm not going to try to identify these. I'm just going to enjoy them. I don't think it was important to Jack that we identify these. The titles of these are Flower, Flower 1, Flower 2, Flower 3, and so forth. I think Jack knew, and that was all that was important to him. And again, you know, he was shooting for himself as well as for the club. He really did enjoy viewing his own stereo photographs and 3D videos. These would have been photographed on a small stage, maybe some black velvet as a background, and perhaps with natural light from a window. It's possible some of Jack's hybridized Louisias are still on his old property. As we'll see, he had a tremendous rock garden where he grew these hybrids and other plants. I'm not sure what the next owner of that home will do with that rock garden. It was substantial, as we'll see. This was a fun one here, much better in 3D than in 2D. I think of with sets of photos like these particular subjects, Jack would have taken these over a span of a few years. And I think with these, as with many of the other techniques that he played with, I think he just played with it until it ran its course and he was ready to try something new. I think this is from his rock garden. Especially later in his life, when Jack was less mobile, he photographed a lot of his rock garden and a lot of the plants and flowers that he grew there. This this stereo photo of this succulent flower is one of the last photos that Jack contributed to the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society, looking at the information embedded in the file. It looks like it was taken on June 28th. And it's a very successful stereo photo, macro stereo photo. It's a bit hyper. The 3D is very pronounced. The exposure's nice. The light's nice. It's got great color. And, I really admire him for sticking with it. Okay. We're going to move on to some other types of plants. They're not really plants. They are, well, wait a minute. I've got the Wikipedia definition right here. Jack could tell you what they are. Lichen is a hybrid colony of algae or cyanobacteria living symbiotically among multiple fungi species. Incidentally, if you're looking at this photo on the YouTube stream, it's probably very broken, and that's because it's not actually a 3D photo. It's a promo image of a roadshow that Jack and I did based on these amazing photos that we'll be seeing. And frankly, I just forgot to convert it to 3D before this slideshow. So we'll move on and look at the actual photos. Here's a great 3D shot of that photo in the promo image. A nice creative that Jack made. Jack had many interests. I don't know where his interest in lichens came from, or how long he had been interested in them. What I know is, around 2016 or so, Jack acquired an inexpensive USB microscope to plug into his computer and began exploring the microscopic world in stereo. Here's that microscope. He actually mounted it on a sturdier base. The microscope is the camera pointing down. And he made a tilting rig out of plexiglass there so that he could manipulate the microscopic sample, adjust its position slightly to capture the element in stereo. And what Jack found when he put lichen under the microscope and captured them in stereo was an incredible microscopic world. He discovered new worlds with this technique, and the results were so striking that we took the show on the road to 2 or 3 Bay Area camera clubs. We also set up a table at the Mycological Society of San Francisco's annual Fungus Fair at Golden Gate Park and had a tremendous response. We would do this. The club has a 3D TV, which we would throw in the back of a car and set up, put a basket of glasses out for people to grab and see for themselves. We did that as recently as last year at Maker Faire, and it always draws a crowd. And the crowd was very enthusiastic for Jack's micro stereo photography. Jack had been a member of the Mycological Society of San Francisco for many years, collecting mushrooms. I forget the technical term for that. Was one of his interests for many years. And if you've never been to a fungus fair, you're missing out. I had no idea. Thousands of attendees from all walks of life, all with amazing stories. Don't miss one if one comes to your part of town. The lichen slideshow that we took on the road consisted of over 100 slides. I think the whole show was longer than an hour. I'm only showing you a few samples. And the samples were actually kind of hard to pick from because so many of them are so interesting and so unique. One thing I am keeping in this section of the slideshow of the lichens are the title cards that Jack created for this slideshow. And the reason I'm doing that, they're not necessarily great 3D photos, but it emphasizes how seriously Jack took this project, how far he traveled to collect his specimens, including out of state, and how fascinated he was by the differences in these microscopic organisms that he witnessed. I don't know who else had explored lichens like this in 3D before Jack. I doubt he invented it, but surely everyone we showed these to, and even at the Mycological Society, people had never seen anything like it. It was very exciting, and Jack stuck with these for quite a while. Maybe a year before he moved on to other subjects. This lichen title slide, by the way, isn't a photo. This is a technique that we play with a lot at the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society. This is from Google Earth, or maybe Google Maps. It's a view from the program, and Jack would have taken 2 screenshots, something like that, and he would have nudged the virtual camera to the left or to the right a few pixels. He would have just tapped the left or right cursor keys on his keyboard and combined them to make a very interesting 3D graphic image. He did quite a few of those. This is the only one I included because they're not really photos, but I know he got a lot out of Google Earth. And this one is quite eerie. It's really something like a sci-fi alien. I think stereo photography for Jack in general and the Lycan show specifically were real true passion projects for Jack. He enjoyed showing them. He enjoyed these exhibitions we gave to camera clubs. But I think he really made them for himself. It would have been the Berkeley Camera Club, the Millbrae Camera Club, and the third camera club escapes me. Boise, of course, was a very important place for Jack. We saw his alumni photo at the beginning of the slideshow. I think near the end of his life, he didn't return as often as he would have liked. But he always talked about it as an important place for him. Let's take a little pause here. I want to explain what's coming up next. And I want to give a heads up about some of these subjects. We're going to get into his sort of transition into creative stereo photography. And this is where things get kind of weird and wild. He definitely had his own style. And to me, this is probably the most fun part of the slideshow. And we have a rather large group here that I'll probably split into two sets. And if there aren't any questions or comments, let's go ahead and continue. All right, so I think a lot of us at the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society remember when Jack started adding birds to his stereo photos. I recall more than I have in my collection. And I'm not always clear where the birds came from. I don't think these were birds that he photographed in flight. Sometimes the effect was unique, which is what I would call this image with the birds prominently through the window, almost in my lap with everything else behind the screen. And sometimes they were, I would say, more successful. I think this one was one of his more popular ones. He actually submitted several versions of this based on our feedback. And while this isn't a photo that was all captured in camera, it's certainly very striking. I don't have a list of the awards and acceptances that his photographs received. He was very active, as I said, in international exhibitions. I wouldn't call Jack competitive, but he did participate. And as I recall, this one did very well. As I recall for this one, I think we complained that there wasn't a subject in it, so he added one for our next meeting. I think when you're in a club like the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society, where we share our stereo photography twice a month, we definitely get to know each other's styles. And I think we could all identify a Jack Muzatko by the birds at one point. Jack would have made these in Photoshop based on photographs that he would have taken with his W3. In this case, probably taken in two different locations. One with the bird and one with the seascape. Jack was certainly no computer whiz. I don't think he ever took a formal class in Photoshop. But he certainly knew enough to make some very fun and very creative compositions. Other than a relatively ancient version of Photoshop, certainly had everything that he needed, and the free Stereo Photo Maker Windows application that we all depend on. I don't think he really employed any other digital tools, filters, programs, that sort of thing. There definitely were more bird photos than that. Let's look at a group of really charming creatives that I know were important to him. And these feature his nephew. He made these, I don't know, I don't have a date, unfortunately, in front of me. I want to say 10 years, but it could be more or less. That's not a creative, but this certainly is a creative. I know this was one of his favorites. And I know with many of the images in this small set, he showed us two, maybe three versions based on the feedback that we gave him at our meetings. Maybe lightening an element, brightening an element, simplifying a background. Up to the point that it met his satisfaction. And there is certainly a dreamlike quality to these, maybe bordering on a nightmarish quality, but I knew he had a tremendous time conceiving of these and turning them into reality. This is a nice transition because Jack did have a B period for a while. These were made over the course of a few years. They are creative macros. The B in this case has been added to the flowers. And he could get even more creative with them. This would be using the, well, I have to correct myself. I was going to say he would have created this using the mirroring feature in Stereo Photo Maker. But actually, as I recall, I think he explained to me he didn't use that feature. He did this type of creative composition in Photoshop. And he was probably using Photoshop 6, maybe Photoshop Elements. Certainly not using any generative AI. Here I think has a creative opportunity to photograph his Louisias and combine them with another interest that he had. And this one here, I think, it certainly was our image of the year. Whichever year that was, he shared it with us. And I'm sure that some of us enjoying this slideshow right now have seen some or maybe all of these photos. Certainly Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society members have. Some of these photos appear in catalogs of stereophotography exhibitions, in print magazines, in brochures. Jack is listed in the Photographic Society of America's Who's Who, rather. For some of his earlier stereophotography, I think the only existing examples probably are in those catalogs. To me, what's funny about this is it would have been an okay picture without the bee, but the bee definitely makes it a story. Now, I'm going to go through these a bit more quickly, and I have, for personal reasons, limited the selection of Jack's spider phase. I hope there aren't any arachnophobes on. These always drew a lot of interest. They can border on the grotesque, but at the same time, there's a lot of beauty that Jack discovered at this scale, shooting these creatures. These are stereo micro photos taken with that $30 USB microscope that he shot the lichens with. And he knew how to have some fun with these also. I can't tell you what inspired Jack to switch from bees to spiders. Maybe he ran out of bees.
Any idea where he got the spiders?
I'm sure he collected these in his garden or in his home. The titles don't betray the type of spider. Again, the titles of these are Light Spider, Dark Spider, Spider 1, Spider 2. But I doubt he traveled far to collect these specimens. Unlike the lichens, I think he got these around his house, around his neighborhood. And I've got to say, for a $30 microscope, the results are pretty good. Of course, he added the B later. And I'll end with the scariest spider, which is the title of this photo. This is a mirrored creative with a very effective false frame through the window effect. And if you would like to enjoy it, I encourage you to check out the YouTube recording. I'm going to move on to something a little more pleasant for me to view. And we're going to get into his true creatives. These are stereo photos that he's making from numerous photographic elements. Not all of them are elements that he photographed. And at their best, he creates a real fantasy world. Jack explained the technique that he used to create this photo, and I didn't understand it then, and I don't remember it now. It's a composite. It's 2 photos. A particularly interesting creative composition. Here's a shot based in Reno. Reno Moon is the title. The roundness of the moon in the sky is something that Jack would have added. I'm sure that's a 2D moon that he converted to 3D. And in my opinion, this photo, Electric Mantis, is one of his best. Might even be my personal favorite. And he's using a few techniques here. He's created, painted that abstract background, which we'll see again. Some mirrored clouds. That's probably the title as well. The photo that I'm showing now is not a creative. This is a photo of a glass statue, a crystal statue that Jack greatly admired. He shot this with his W3. He shot it from several angles. And while he didn't purchase this statue and take it home, it did make many appearances in his creative works. Here's one right here. I think that's a corpse flower at the San Francisco Conservatory of Flowers. Unfortunately, the title doesn't tell us. This is another creative that Jack spent quite a bit of time on and shared several versions with the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society as he refined it. It definitely tells a story. It probably tells a story that really could only come from Jack, where we have the two views of the crystal statue. We have some mushrooms, we have a moon, we have some, looks like some light painting or some sort of graphic design. We have that star trail. There's a lot going on in this one. And Jack was definitely the type of individual who could take a photo of a statue, bring it home, and get the same amount of enjoyment out of it. Actually, probably more, because it allowed him to use it creatively. Jack did, as I've said, enjoy his own photography. He also made personal videos of landscapes, oceanscapes, cityscapes that he would watch sort of meditatively. These were not videos that he would necessarily edit or change, but he found a lot of fascination with what he captured. One story that I can tell, I remember Jack bought a new car, a Subaru, I think it was a Forester. In any case, one of the first things he did when he brought it home is he mounted a bracket on the front grille so that he could attach a GoPro. This wouldn't have been in 3D, but he then took the Subaru on a road trip, I think through Gold Rush country, some of his favorite landscapes, and captured video of the road, which he would watch. He got a lot out of that. I'd love to know where these flying saucers came from. They look like models. Jack had exhibited this photo. I think this is Mount Rainier. He had exhibited it separately before the UFOs came in later. And there's something creative happening here. I'm sure you can discover it. It's peering out at us through this plant, which may be from his garden. I'm not sure where all of these elements come from. I know where these elements come from. In Jack's backyard, he had a active bird feeder, and in his home, he had a collection of masks. And this is a combination of the two. A rather grotesque but very effective creative stereo composition that says a lot about Jack. It says a lot about his his taste in the fine arts. I don't think Jack would have ever considered himself a fine artist. But as I said, some of his stereo photos did approach fine art. Certainly they had many fine art or artistic qualities. But that's not what Jack was making these stereo photos for. Really a fun retinal rivalry effect with this, having the different colors for the starbursts, which he probably just drew with the pencil tool in Photoshop. Close the Window is the title of this one. This is one of his later creatives and one of my favorites. It's very subtle what he's done here, using the retinal rivalry effect, giving the details in this flower different colors. If you look at it closely, you can see that his technique is very simple here. These are just colored circles. And as we get later into Jack's stereophotography, we'll see that he really does simplify his technique. I think at this point, Jack, who was a chemist by profession, he had a long career with Chevron, was thinking more like an engineer. You've reached perfection, not if there's anything left to add, but if there's nothing left to take away. I see that in this stereo photo. I think we saw this background used and reused in more than one of his creatives, maybe flipped or rotated or darkened. I don't know much about Jack's creative process. I think he just made it up as he went along and worked spontaneously at his computer with the photos that he would start with as a foundation. There's another bird. And we have one more set following this one. I'm going to take a quick pause here. How are we doing so far? Are we hanging in there? You know, this is a lot of stereo photos. I know that watching a 2-hour slideshow can be very demanding on your attention. It can be very fatiguing, especially if you're not local in California. So before we conclude with the final slideshow, I do want to express my appreciation for hanging in there. It was hard for me to reduce the number of photos in the slideshow. I was planning on doing a slideshow of just 20 or 30 slides, which for most people is plenty. But Jack has so many interesting stereo photos and used so many unique techniques that I just wanted it all to be represented. So thank you for hanging in there. And we're going to conclude with his later stereo photography. And these are some creatives and some other techniques as well. Let's take a look here. Okay, there I am. So, as I said, we've arrived at some of Jack's later stereo photography. This is going back about 5 years or so. Later in his stereo photography career, he stayed closer to home. Jack's mobility became diminished. He suffered from a lot of muscle pain. He wasn't in denial about his ability to revisit the places that he loved, but I know that it did bother him, and it's something that he talked about. I think his slowing mobility coincided with the COVID lockdown, and I know that that was hard for him also. He still found ways to engage himself creatively, including with stereo photography, as we're seeing here. But I know it was an adjustment for him because, as we've seen, he traveled all over the state and even out of the state with his camera. And in many cases, he was traveling for the sole purpose of taking stereo photos. So he had to find new subjects. I mentioned his yard, his backyard, his $1 million view, his rock garden, which we'll see. Here's some of his birds. These are pigeons visiting his bird feeder. He always had bird feeders. He photographed, he sought interesting compositions in his home. This is an incredible carved door. He told me the story about how he had commissioned this. He photographed it several times. Here's a creative mirrored version of a detail of that front door. He's looking for light and shadow. And over the years, we saw a lot of this view. This particular image here, I'm reasonably sure, if not this one, then maybe another, is from before the period of time that I'm really describing here. But the point I want to make is that he did find subjects wherever he was, wherever he went. And that takes effort. You really do have to apply yourself creatively in order to find a subject that is worth taking a photo of, that's worth sharing with people. And I think that's the demand that the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society puts on our members. I don't demand it, but I certainly want to have my 4 photos every month to share with everyone. It's very motivating, and I'm very pleased that Jack stayed motivated to continue experimenting with stereo photography. One of Jack's ideas was to photograph the TV. We've talked about the method of taking stereo photos with a single lens camera and taking 2 slightly offset photos. We've also talked about the technique of taking those photos while moving in a vehicle, and you can do the same thing with a scrolling subject on TV. This is a shot. I think he photographed this off of his TV, a regular 2D picture that he took 2 photos of, probably as a helicopter was flying left to right and photographing this. And as I said, he had his rock garden, and we see, I'm sure, some of his Lewisias could be spotted here. By the way, he did add that bird. This is from his bird period. The rock garden included crystals and rocks that he had collected from, well, he told me specifically the regions where he collected the rocks, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten. He also told me with some mirth that this whole rock garden was cemented together, and he had no idea how the next owner of the house was going to get rid of it. That's not something that kept him up at night. And I'm glad that he had this subject to continue to explore and enjoy. And make a lot of use out of. This photo here certainly would have been taken with his Samsung smartphone. What was it, the S22, something like that. He really was amazed by the camera on that smartphone, as am I. And I think he was so entranced by it that he kind of gave up his W3. And that really changed the subjects that he shot and the compositions. Because using that technique, of course, you can't really photograph action or motion. Because elements moving between the 2 exposures are going to look, well, they're going to cause 3D errors. 3D errors that could be corrected in Photoshop, but that's not how Jack preferred spending his time. And we will conclude the slideshow with this stereo photo of Jack taken by Melinda Green. And I think this really kind of captures the spirit of Jack. And I think I certainly like to think of him looking ahead. And I think this is a very fine photo and a very fine photo of Jack to conclude our slideshow with. And that's what we have from Jack's collection. Thank you again for enjoying this with me. If there are any questions or comments, please share them. If you'd like me to go back and forth to a particular photo, I'll do my best. And as I said, there will be a recording of the slideshow of this video, a recording of the slideshow on YouTube in both the anaglyph and the half-width side-by-side formats. And I can also make the photos available for download as well, along with a list of titles and dates, months and years. Not specifically of when Jack would have taken the photo, but when he would have shared it with the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society. So I'll put that together, and you can look for a post on our website or an email announcement when that's done. You've probably all heard enough of me. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say before we call it a night?
I have
Yes.
a question
Matt?
about,
Sure. Hang on,
Well, go
Steve.
ahead.
Let's listen to Dennis first.
go ahead, Steve.
Are you sure? Okay, Steve, you've got the floor.
Oh, okay. Well, Matt, I just want to say you did a great job. Must have been a huge undertaking. I was really impressed. You had something interesting to say about each and every picture. I don't think I could have done it or any of us could have done it. So, bravo to you. I know it was a time-consuming project, and Jack deserved nothing less.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was actually really easy. Jack did all the hard work. He took all the photos. And for those who are new to the Golden Gate Stereoscopic Society, we actually do this twice a month on Zoom with slideshows and streams. And I probably talk too much in those meetings, but I definitely have plenty of practice. And for those who are new to this, who are returning to this, and who would like to see more by other makers, I encourage you to visit one of our meetings. They're on Zoom. Everyone is welcome. And there is information about our meetings on our website. That reminds me, I need to announce that our next meeting is 3 weeks from now, a little bit less than 3 weeks, on Tuesday, October 1st. Same time, 7 to 9 Pacific time on Zoom with the same link. So we hope to see you there. Dennis.
Yes, I had a couple questions about Matt and the Golden Gate or the Oakland club. I see from our records that he lives in Pinole or Pinole.
Pinole, that's right.
Pinole, which is kind of inland from San Francisco.
Right.
And I'm not sure how far that would be from where you used to meet physically as a club.
Not too far.
So he didn't have to travel too far to.
No. When we met physically, there were a couple locations. We finally settled on a room at the Albany Community Center, which is maybe a 20-30 minute drive from Pinole. So it wasn't a long distance for him to get there. And yeah, as I said, I don't know how we did it, meeting in person every month. I miss it, but yeah. And I think Jack first visited one of our meetings in 2009.
And at that time, did you have like monthly or bi-monthly competitions?
We were a very competitive club back then. We're less competitive now, even though we still vote on each other's photos. It's we don't award ribbons anymore, which we actually used to do. We would meet monthly. We had a projected division. When I started, we were still projecting realist slides. And then we upgraded or evolved, I guess you could say, to digital projectors. We also had a print division, and we were printing and sharing stereo cards for homes stereoscopes, such as this one right here. Up until, oh gosh, 8-10 years ago, something like that.
Did Matt make serial cards?
Jack did not make prints.
Jack?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Jack was strictly a digital stereo photographer, with the exception, I think, of some a collection of slides that he had taken, 2D slides that he had taken throughout his life that he would scan and then convert into 3D.
Very good. I just wanted to add the comment that I had sent to you by email that I'm part of the Detroit Club, and he would contribute to our Detroit International Stereo Exhibition every year from 2013 to 2023. And he accumulated 35 acceptances with 6 awarded images. He he was always one of our favorite photographers.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I have that in my notes and I overlooked it. He participated in, I think, all of the major internationals, including the, I had a list right here, including our old Oakland International, the Detroit International, the Cascade International, the Southern Cross International, the PSA annual, and others as well. Of course, the Hollywood International. It's interesting. Jack wasn't competitive. He did have, I think he had 4 PSA stars. And PSA stars are awarded based on the number of acceptances and awards given for photos entered in these international competitions. And there's a scale. I think each additional star requires more acceptances to be awarded, and
Pretty much double
double.
the previous star.
Well, Jack wasn't competitive. I think being awarded those stars was motivating for him. I think being recognized in international exhibitions was very rewarding for him. And it was definitely something that encouraged him to make stereo photography. It's not like he was defined by winning a stereo photography competition, but he definitely appreciated the other contestants, his fellow stereo photographers, and I think it meant a lot to him when his stereo photography was recognized and appreciated. I had wanted to go through my collection of international exhibition catalogs and pull all of Jack's information out of there. Every catalog that I'm in, Jack is in also. You can count on that, and he's going to have a higher recognition than I am in that catalog. And I still may do that, go through and just pull out that information so that we can, see exactly how he influenced these competitions. All right. Yeah, I have in the chat from Mike, yes, please, a download would be much appreciated. You got it. Yeah, I'll set that up and have that going. Send out an email with that information. I'll try to do that later this week.
Matt, I just want to say that was amazing. You really captured my uncle's everything.
Oh,
Your
great.
accuracy on information, you would question yourself, and I'm like, no, you're right. That was good. So good job.
Thank you.
You
Thank
really
you.
captured him well. Thank
All
you.
right.
And he would have loved that. And as much as he wasn't competitive, he was, and he would have loved this. And yeah.
I think that defines him, right? He certainly he would not have taken a loss personally, but I think he
No.
definitely would have enjoyed a win.
Yep.
Yeah, Jack was a good friend. We grew close over the years. We had other interests in common, but 3D was that main interest. And I spent a lot of time at his house. He would be very proud of projects he was working on, both 3D projects and otherwise. I got a lot of advanced screenings of his 3D videos and slideshows, and I'm really grateful that he involved me in that also.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the whole club for being a friend to him. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you got it. So keep your eye out. I'll send out an email and you can grab all this and keep it.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'd like to make one comment for our newcomers. Make an effort to get a way to view those photos in stereo. I think maybe the viewer that Steve has, well, not those Steve, the the Barrowson viewer. There you go. To really appreciate some of those outstanding photographs. They really are worth seeing in 3 dimensions. So a cheap viewer would really do them justice.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Jack was seeing in 3D. Of course, we all have binocular vision, but when Jack made these photos, he was thinking in 3D. So you're not getting the whole photo, seeing the 2D equivalent of it.
Go so far as to say that the 3D viewing is the whole point. It's the magic that really brought us all together and inspired us to share and to play with. Sometimes I'll take a 2D picture as a record or something when I'm out and about, but it's like if I'm not shooting it in 3D, I kind of don't want to do it. I mean, if it's a nice subject, I want it in stereo. So yeah, it's the common passion that we shared, and Jack really played with that aspect of it a lot. And even when it hurt, I still appreciated his creativity and his efforts.
Yeah, thanks, Melinda. I feel the same way. Some of Jack's photos did hurt in the sense that they were so extreme that the stereo effect might have been too pronounced. As I said, he wasn't the most precise stereo photographer when it came to things like alignment. And, that's to his credit. That's not something that he worried about a lot. But I think we did get a good example here tonight. And I think, Melinda, you hit the nail on the head when you use that word magic, because there is a magical quality to this, and I think that's what attracted Jack to it. Jack was very interested in other ways of perceiving the world. He wasn't into drugs. He gave up drinking many, many years ago. But he was always curious about enhancing his perception, about perceiving in new and different ways. And 3D certainly scratched that itch for him. And I think he felt like he was making magic photos, which we really are in a way. It's an illusion. It's an optical illusion. And it's an optical illusion that he was, very, very intrigued by. And I think all of us stereo photographers who are here feel that way.
Thanks for putting this together, Matt.
It was
You
my
did a great
pleasure.
job.
It was my pleasure. Well, thank you, everyone. I think we're going to call it a night. We're actually winding up 5 minutes early. I'd like to say I timed this perfectly, but really I just kind of wanted to have fun here tonight. So thank you for letting me play around here. I hope to see some or all of you in a couple weeks. And I think you all have my contact information. So please reach out to me if you have any additional questions, if there's any other information I can provide you, and I will be providing those links to download and view the photos and the videos. So until then, good night, and I'll see you later. Thank you all.
Thanks all.